Okay, the recording has started, and a very good morning to all of you all. This probably is the last lecture before the short Diwali break that we are going to have. The details of the same would be available very soon. Um, I am, however, planning it a bit differently. That we may be having our Diwali break for the next 2 weeks, but once Diwali gets over, I plan to start my lectures on the Thursday after that. So it would be, just let me check. So 7th to 13th and 14th, 15th. Okay, 1 to 6 is the Diwali week, let us say, and 7 to 13th after that also. We are going to start college on the 15th, is what the news is for as of today. And I plan to start my lectures in on the 11th. That's 3 days in the vacation. I'll of course post a message in the group regarding that and availability of students accordingly. Let us see how it works. Yesterday, we went into the details of how to understand the technicalities as far as measuring time, moving eastward, westward, and particularly when we tend to cross the international date line also. A few things to understand is that, or rather revise, is that while the thumb rule for moving east and west from any place is one, exactly opposite is the thumb rule when I cross the international date line with regards uh, time is concerned. So that's something which at times tends to be confusing unless and until one has actually understood the basic logic of it. So students of geography particularly would be uh, at a benefit if they understand the basic uh, logic behind that. Today I would be now starting with another interesting topic which is not a part of your syllabus, but I take it up as an advanced learning sort of a thing for students as such. And I hope you are able to see this, and you'll see all these weird names in front of you all. But if you remember, I initially started in one of my lectures, I said that we need to understand what are the um, compatibilities as far as the terms of lakhs and millions and crores are concerned. Uh, say the relativity between them. And having done that, where in geography would we be using these numbers as such? And let us understand it today that we are going to do it in what is going to be called as the geological time scale. What exactly is the geological time scale? Okay, the normal time scale, you'll see that human beings uh, to measure time in days, and of course in hours, and then days, and of course in years. As far as humanity or man on this planet is concerned, you have a significant period for which man has been there on this particular planet. Whether man has been there on this planet from the first day, obviously not. Not all life. In fact, no life was there when the earth went into formation. And when did this happen? This happened around 4.6 billion years ago. Billion is, of course, one, and you're going to have nine zeros on that. Okay, so 4.5, 4.6 billion years is a significant time for a considerable period in the initial phases. Let us understand that the Earth was actually a huge ball of matter and mass and gases, and it was slowly that it kept on shrinking in size till it came to the present shape. And in the process, of course, because it was spinning around its axis, which was much faster than what it does today. And of course, it was revolving around the sun, and the gravity of the sun was playing an important role in that. The Earth also developed its own gravity, and because of that, we'll see that the variations as far as the density of the various layers from the crust outside and to the core inside, and one of the layers within the core is liquid. We're going to go into those details when we understand the say the topic on the interior of the Earth. But this happening took several years, and even after that, okay, you'll see that what we see on the surface today. Say for example, within India you have these uh, three major mountain ranges, which normally every geographer who has done school level geography will know is the Himalayan ranges is one, and of course then the eastern and the western Ghats on the peninsula is two. Then the Aravalli range is another one. However, you will see that when we speak about the age of these three, you'll understand that the Aravallis are much older, and there was a complete period like that wherein mountains similar to the Aravalli were being formed in different parts of the world, just like uh, what followed after that. Aravalli is a fold mountain range, and we have a larger fold mountain range which came up in the form of the Himalayas. And while the Himalayas were being in formation in the Asian continent, you had the Alps being formed in the European continent, and of course you had the Rockies and the Andes which were formed in that particular period. Okay, how do we know the age of this? Of course, this is comes out with a lot of research. Okay, the rock study and the geological time scale study, to be more okay, if I to be more elaborate on it. If I am to scale the time wise, or I am to scale the age of these three major mountains that we have in India, I would say Aravallis is the oldest, and the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats follow them, and eventually then you have the Himalayas. So the Himalayas are the latest in the formation, obviously, and because of that, you'll see that they are of a very say high altitude. Okay, highest in the world, of course. We also know that. Um, but to know this, okay, where what happened and so on and so forth, we need to also know the way in which we measure this. Okay, and how is this measured? This is measured by geologists, and the time scale of that goes into say millions and millions and hundreds of millions, I would say a few thousands of millions of years. And that is why you'll see that it has to have its own scale of measurement, because uh, if we assume that, okay, let us count them in the way we live our lives, say year by year. Just imagine even saying that year by year for the 4.6 billion times that the earth has been existing would take a considerable period. Okay, okay. Even if, just imagine if you start saying one, okay, at the max you would be saying one three times in a second, and that you have to say for. So if it's going to be three times, then to say it 4.6 billion times, you would have to divide it by three. So it would require at least 1.5 billion seconds. Now, 1.5 billion seconds, you can equate it to the number of time, say that could be generated in times, hours, days, and probably years. I never did this. I thought of this right at this time, and that's why I said that, okay, if I start saying it 4.6 billion times, how much time should I consume? And that is why you'll see that we are not in a position to use the normal time scale that we use in the form of seconds and hours and days and years, because that serves a different purpose. This is going to serve a different purpose, and as a consequence, The geologists rather, geological researchers, I could also say, came up with a very peculiar type of scale, and that is called as the geological time scale, which is very important for geography students, particularly those who would be interested in physical geography more, uh, so that you connect. Now, is it only geography that it is going to be important for? No, it is important in geology as well. It is important in chemistry as well. It is important in biology as well. Why is it important? It's important in physics also. Now, let's come to each of them. What is the importance of each of it in each of them? To start with chemistry, you'll see that when I search for say climate change data, when I search for climate change data, what do I do? I normally go for ice core tubes. Now, what are ice core tubes? What they do is they go on the continent of Antarctica, which has piles and piles of ice, and they'll drill a borehole into that, and they'll pull out that particular ice. Now, what importance and what function does it serve? You'll see that ice keeps on accumulating every season here, and it will come into piles over say piles of snow over 100 years, and then 10,000 years, and then lakhs of years, and then 10 lakhs of years, and so on and so forth. So if I am trained in cryospheric studies, that study of these things, what I do is I can read the age and the years in which that particular ice was has settled. I don't know how many of you all have watched the movie Jurassic Park, the first version of it. Okay, if you see, what they do is they recreate the uh, DNA of a dinosaur from the blood of a mosquito who possibly may have bitten the that respective dinosaur, and it tend to freeze down in a particular area. So that is, of course, it's not as simple as I'm telling it. I have restrictions of time, and it's not not our cup of tea right away as such. But then similarly, you'll see that when ice settles down, it could have air bubbles in that. Now just imagine that if an air bubble in the ice, say several thousands of years ago, is protected in that pile, I would take the sample of that particular air bubble, and I would try to study the say the variation or the composition of the atmospheric gas at that particular point of time. Having done that, I would see that possibly the carbon dioxide levels then were less, or possibly the carbon dioxide levels were more than what we have them today, and so on and so forth. And then I could go into the biological studies of that, in the sense that if carbon dioxide levels were more, what was the size of the animals? Okay, was the average size same as today, or was it larger and smaller, and so on and so forth? What was the type of life that was existing in that particular period as well? Yes, radioactive dating is also something that is done, but let me tell you that as far as radioactive dating is concerned, it cannot be done for living in the sense animals which were living at particular point of time. For that, you have what is called as carbon dating. Okay,
Sir,
so
it is actually radioactive dating method is actually used for to calculate the age of things, right, which are found underneath the ground.
yeah, we do. But you'll see that when as far as living beings are concerned, they are made up of carbon, most of it, and that's the only part of the body that tends to be stored for a longer period of time. So organic material, if you want to date organic material, you have to use carbon dating as a method. As far as other things are concerned, I'm coming to radioactive dating as such. Why do we need to understand geological time scale with reference to physics? You'll see that, and all these studies of older periods in that particular time are called as paleo. Okay, paleo means old, so paleophysics, paleochemistry, paleobotany, paleozoology is going to be going back into the geological history as such. Okay, and you'll see that this word paleo is going to be having a lot of logic in the geological time scale when we are going to understand it also. So when I'm going to study physics, say for example, I need to date the rocks that are there as far as uh, say ocean floors are concerned. Okay, we'll again be referring to it when we speak about the theory of continental formation and so on and so forth. Okay, the story of Alfred Wegener and his continental drift is one thing, and understanding the geography and the dynamics of it is another. So I'll keep all these technicalities when we go into that. But then when I'm going to date a particular rock as such, how do I date it, particularly with reference to igneous rocks? Igneous rocks have a lot of iron in it. Okay, so when this magma comes out and it starts flowing in lava, see, I've used two words, magma and lava. There is a definite difference between what you call as magma and what you call as lava. So when the magma comes up and it starts settling down, it starts flowing as lava and it starts settling down. It solidifies because it comes in contact with very say the normal air temperature. Now, while it is solidifying, you'll see that the iron in that, it tends to align itself with reference to the North Pole and the South Pole. Now, when I'm saying the North Pole and South Pole, I'm referring to the magnetic North Pole and South Pole of the Earth. Having said this, again, it is tempting me to bring in a lot of information for you all, which I should not be, because explaining the geological time scale itself is going to take some time. But anyway, you'll see that when this is going to be solidifying, it's going to align itself with reference to the magnetic North Pole and South Pole. And you can say, tell where the magnetic North Pole and South Pole were at that particular point of time if we study the cross sections of these rocks. Okay, this is done in geology. They take cross sections and they use a geological microscope to understand the aligning of the iron in that particular material. Having said that, why do we have to say magnetic North Pole and magnetic South Pole? Okay, why don't we just say the geographical North Pole, South Pole, or why don't we just say the North Pole and South Pole? You'll see that the geographical North and South do not change their positions, but the magnetic North Pole and South Pole have changed times, many have changed poles rather many times. Now, why does this happen? When does this happen? Let me tell you that this drifting, you can search for change of magnetic poles on YouTube, and you'll get these beautiful small clips of informative clips on that. You'll see that the churning of the outer core, which is liquid, takes place. You'll see that that is somewhere responsible for the change in the magnetism as such. And it is believed that the Earth has been changing the magnetic poles in a cycle of every 5 lakh years. Just like we saw that the climate change has a cycle, so this also has a cycle. Every 5 years, 5 lakh years, sorry, the Earth will change its magnetism as far as the poles are concerned. However, a very interesting fact is that it has not changed its poles for the last 7 lakh years. So possibly, is it time that the Earth is going to change its poles again? We actually don't know. Okay, it could be another 2-3 lakh years before this happens, or it could already be time for that. What would be the differences? How would this happen? Now, don't worry, it would not happen like I sleep tonight, that's the 30th of October, and tomorrow morning, 31st of October, we'll find that all of this has changed. No, this happens at its own pace, and that's going to take a few thousands of years also. So immediately we don't have to worry. But are there changes that could take place? Yes, definitely changes would take place. I'll give you a very simple example. When we speak about these migratory birds as such, what they are said to be using as far as the sense of direction is concerned is magnetism of this particular Earth. So if the whole magnetism is going to reverse, as it is called, obviously the birds who use it are going to be a bit off their radar, you could say, as far as identifying directions is concerned. It would be some time before which all of this Sir, may I share the information I have regarding? Yes, yes, yes. Who was that? You can unmute yourself and we'll enjoy something. Yes, Rishikesh. Yeah,
Sir, it is me.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. The position of Earth's magnetic north pole was first located in 1831, sir. Then it's gradually drifted to northwest by more than 600 miles, and now it is speeded to 10 miles.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. In fact, when you don't have your geography practicals in the first year BA, but we have them for first year BSc, and we learn what are called as topo sheets. Then, and on every topo sheet, you'll see that they have one point. Of course, there is a lot of information. One of that information is magnetic inclination. What Rishikesh is referring to is local. You'll see that everything is so very dynamic within the interior of the earth, that though we say that okay, this is the geographical north pole, you'll see that say the magnetic north pole keeps on shifting here and there. It could be a few half a degree here and there, but it tends to change. What I'm referring to is in fact a reversal of poles. That's the magnetic north shifts to the say, if we start with a case wherein the magnetic north and the geographical north are together, it may so happen that the magnetic north goes all the way to the geographic south, and the magnetic south comes to the magnetic north. So both of these are possible, that locally the magnetic north keeps on shifting here and there, as he has said, that right from the 19th century, around 1831, it has been shifting for nearly 600 miles or kilometers. I could not get that. But having said that, okay, if you remember Wegener and the continental drift theory, if you have done it at any point of time earlier, when the peninsular India started drifting to the place where it is somewhere near somewhere near the present South Africa, how is this magnetic pole created? Well, the Earth itself is a magnet. Okay, anything that has now you may have done this as an experiment in a school level. Of course, it does not happen absolutely that, but just to remind you, what you had done is uh, conversion of electric current into electric energy into magnetic energy, and magnetic energy into electric energy. And of course they use it as a physical energy also. You take a piece of iron and you wind copper around it, and then you pass current through that particular copper wire. And you remember that experiment, you had it in 8th, 9th or 10th, I don't know which class you they have it nowadays. We had it in our 8th standard when I was in school. And yes, Rishikesh, you wanted to say something.
Sir, magnetic field is generated by electric current due to the motion of convection currents, right, sir?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes.
And a mixture of molten iron and nickel in the Earth's outer surface help it uh, to prevail, I guess.
I'm not that much known to that, but uh, when I recollect, that is how we had this small experiment in school, wherein they told when they where they showed us how a temporary magnet can be created, and so on and so forth.
Actually, I
Anyway,
saw this
yeah.
on Discovery Channel yesterday. That's why.
Oh, good,
Sorry,
good, good.
second.
Right, right. Okay, fine. Thank you. We could digress and drift into so many interesting facts about science, but then let us come back to where we had to. And but before I come to that, you'll see that the iron, say the iron content orientation in any rock will give you an idea to where to in which direction or where exactly the magnetic north was placed as at that particular point of time. And that of course has happened many thousands years ago, and that is how we required something called as a geological time scale. So many things in paleo studies required us to actually divide those 4.6 billion years into many parts, so that we understood. Now this division is to do with a lot of research that tends to happen along with that. And let me now start with trying to make you understand what all this is about. Now, uh, if I am to make this a bit enlarged, let me just give me some time. This is the geological time scale. I've got this from the internet, and you'll see that this is based on data from Gradstein in 1990 as such. Now, how do you read this? This is actually a long scale. Okay, you should be placing this. Okay, uh, this is the central one here. Okay, this one is enlargement of the earlier one. So the one to your left is the oldest one and the largest one. The one in the center, the second one from the left, is a bit of I would say, zoom into that particular period. And the third one from the left is again a further zoom in from that particular period. And the picture to the extreme right of your screen is something that is to do with how life evolved in these phases. So we'll come to it one by one. Let us first understand the whole technique of the logic behind all these things. Now, you'll see that when we measure time as such, we tend to divide into subdivisions, in the sense that we divided it into eons and we divided it into eras as such. And you see that the whole eras are split into uh, um, three sub eras, and then further and further. But let us, as I said, start from say the one to the extreme left of your screens. Even now, okay, you'll see that this here is 4.6 4,600 what is it, millions of years. So that means 4.6 billion years. 4,600 million is 4.6 billion years. And it and the age of the earth, or measuring of the age of the earth, starts from that point, and it comes all the way to the present here, that is zero. So that is how I'm going to measure this, and this is how it is going to be for all the three columns. But as I said, let us understand the first column first. However, let me also tell you that what is discussed, the maximum. Let me get my stylus here ready for it, because I would be requiring that as such. When we understand all of these things, you'll see that actually 90% of the geological time scale is not at all known to us. Known to us in the sense, we don't have a lot of information about it to trace it in a sequence. It is only the last 10%, 11% of it. That means the last 500 million years. Okay, the last 500 million years, that is more known to us, and that is why you'll see that this 500 million years opens to us in this whole scenario, and then the last of the few million years again opens to us here. So that is how we would be reading this particular scale. Now you'll see that this red thing that you see here, Precambrian. Okay, most of it is the period. It's called as Precambrian, obviously, because it is previous to the Cambrian. Now, what is Cambrian? What is the Cambrian explosion, and so on and so forth, is something that it's very interesting to understand. I have a documentary on that. I'll just search for it and we'll arrange for it on some day. Okay, in the sense that someday, in the sense that the 7 o'clock lecture that we are supposed to have on Saturdays, I'm trying to schedule our documentary screening lectures on 7 o'clock. Let us see how it. I was to start it very soon, but then the Diwali break has come in. Let us keep that aside. But then Precambrian, what is Cambrian, etc. As I said, I'll come to that. But the Precambrian is also divided further into Prisconian, and then the Archean and the Proterozoic. Now, obviously, all these words, I don't think any one of you all, okay, any one of you all has read all of these words. Anyone who knows all these words, please let me know about it. I would be very happy to know about that. But I doubt whether any one of us has come across all of these words. In fact, I would say that even anyone who knows even 50% of these words would find. I won't say that no one would be knowing anything, basically, because if you see Jurassic, Triassic, okay, all this, at least these things are known to us, because this period is something related to the dinosaurs. And then I would also say that Quaternary period, probably people are known to that. Pleistocene, Holocene, people are known to that because this is where we come near to the human evolution on this particular planet. But rest of this, unless and until you have heard a lecture, you are trained on it, it's difficult to be known to it. So I need to give you a few basics as to how to understand this and a few terms as such. As far as the first I want to refer to is Cambrian. Okay, something before that is going to be pre-Cambrian. So Cambrian is going to be somewhere here. We'll go into the details of that. Before that or after that, let us also understand a term called as zoic. Okay, zoic, azoic. Azoic is non-living and zoic is living. Okay, so you'll see that life actually, larger forms, I'm not saying life absolutely, but larger forms of life will be seen in after this particular period. Okay, so wherever you come across the word zoic, it is just it is associated with life as such. Okay, and then let me also bring to your notice something here. Okay, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. The same things you'll see that they have been zoomed into here. Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic here, Mesozoic after that, and Cenozoic. That's the modern form of life. Paleo is old form of life. Meso is middle form of life, and Cenozoic is the modern form of life. Modern form of life is not with reference to human beings being modern, the whole sense of life on this particular planet being modern. Now, why do they call it modern and old? It's basically the various organs and the strength of these organs and the various size of these organs that various organisms on this particular planet evolved over a period of time. Now, obviously, remembering all these terms is going to be very, very difficult. Yes, remembering this could be easy. Okay, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. As I have already given you the logic behind that, old form of life, medial form of life, and modern form of life. All of this is called as Phanerozoic. Phanerozoic is the evolution. Phanera is evolution of plants, particularly followed by plants of animals. Plants are older than animals. Let us again strike this in our minds. Now, we had this because I did my BSc and I had geology as one of my subjects at FY BSc. We did this and we were required to remember all these names. And then obviously we see that what we do when we are required to memorize something wherein you would not have heard about those terms earlier, and suddenly within 3-4 months you're supposed to be learning them for an exam. What do? Normally, you'll see that you'll break them into points. You'll take the first letter of each of that points, you'll put it together, and then you'll try to make some sensible a sentence out of it, which would help you in using the same to memorize or to recollect what you had memorized for it. Such technique is called as mnemonics. This is called as mnemonics. Okay, M is silent. That's why, though we write Mnemonics, okay, you'll see that we normally pronounce it as mnemonics. Now, what exactly is mnemonics? You'll see here that there is this word or this sentence made out of for some purpose. Camels often sit down carefully. Okay, as if we speak to camels every day. Camels and some camel is expressing his her view that oh, I have some problem, so I'm sitting down carefully. Camels often sit down carefully. Perhaps they are joints creak. Okay, perhaps the joints creak. We don't know. Persistent early oiling might prevent permanent rheumatism. Now, this is so to say so very absurd and so very amusing sentence to be made up of. Camels often sit down carefully. Perhaps their joints creak. Persistent early oiling. So you take care of those joints, and that might prevent permanent rheumatism, which is an ailment in medical thing. Now, where do you apply this? Okay, I'll tell you where we apply this. Okay, the C for Cambrian. is camels. O for Ordovician. Okay. Often sit down carefully. Perhaps their joints creak. Getting it? And early oiling. No, no, no. You yes. Early oiling might prevent, okay, and so on and so. That is how it carries on. Okay, we'll come to it point by point once we have solved this query into understanding the geological time scale. How much time do we have? Oh, already short of time, another 10 minutes to go. Anyway, let's see how much we can finish, and then we'll take it up when we meet next time. I'll give you some assignments. I'll just give you an overview of what is to be understood of the whole thing as such. You'll see that the larger forms of life have come, larger in the sense visible to the human eye, have come up only in the last 500 million years. Only in the last 500 million years. Having said that, what happened for the 4 billion years before that is very, very interesting. However, not much of it is known to us. Uh, as far as sorry, as far as this one is concerned, you'll see that in the Cambrian period, that's around 500 million years ago, we have the first of the fish and first of the choroids. Now, what are choroids? Students who have learned zoology seriously would be in a position to let us know about it. But then after that, you'll see that what changed, or why did these geologists shift from Cambrian period to Ordovician period. You'll see that each of these period has to have, each of these era, is it era or period? Let me just confirm. Period. Each of these periods mm, will have some striking feature change. Like, for example, Cambrian is fish and choroids come into existence. Ordovician is they diversify into metazoan families as such. And then Silurian is where you have the first vascular plants. And then Devonian is where you have the first amphibians and jawed fishes in diversity. And then this is actually Carboniferous. The Americans will divide this into two more, Pennsylvanian and Mississippian, but internationally, if you look for this on Google, it is normally referred to Carboniferous. Carboniferous, carbon, obviously the word carbon, and if you see that the coal that we use today dates back to this particular period. Small scale trees, seeds of in ferns and first reptiles are the characteristic feature of the Carboniferous. Okay, then in the Permian period, the reptiles diversify. This is also a period wherein major extinctions took place. Okay, there is a long story of each of this. Okay, and then followed by that, you have the Triassic, wherein you start having the first mammals. At the same time, you start having the first dinosaurs as such. But the mammals did not progress that fast, as fast as the dinosaurs. They had their own reason for that, and that's why you'll see that after the Cretaceous, okay, Triassic, Jurassic, and the Cretaceous, you'll see by the end of the Cretaceous, you have the dinosaurs going extinct as well. However, while this happened, the first of the primates, okay, remember primates are monkeys. We belong to the family of primates. So our origin starts around the Cretaceous period, which is going to be around 100 million years ago. You also have flowering plants. Flowering is to do with the reproduction in botany. So that's another stage, important stage in the evolution that takes place. And then you have mammals diversifying in the Paleogene, and then you have in the Quaternary period, you have the evolution of the human beings as such. This is the history of larger forms of life in the last 650 million years as such. We have this in details basically because of extensive study out of fossils, and fossils are available for the last 500 600 million years. We may not have it before that because of the dynamisms as far as the earth's crust has gone through this whole period of 4.6 billion years, and this dynamism is caused through what are seen as hotspots. You'll see that this slide shows you the world hotspot. And if I could highlight this one here, the reunion hotspot. Okay, I want you all to check what is the importance. Why of all the hotspots, you'll see that I have the Hawaii hotspot, which is one of the major ones of these days. And then I have this Caroline and Samoa and Louisville, but then or the Tristan or the Jane Mayen. But why is it that the first hotspot I had to speak about is the reunion? I leave you with this particular question. Of the various questions I'm going to leave you behind with, that if you can go into the details and try to understand why am I referring to the reunion hotspot first of all these hotspots. Is it something to do with our existence, our country, or the southern part of this country, and so on and so forth? You'll see that you will have to understand what hotspots are first, and then follow it up with the importance of the reunion hotspot. Um, you'll see that very often it has been found that the people not very fairly, who are not trained in understanding time in millions and billions of years, find it very difficult to relate to the geological time scale. And that is why there are various efforts in which people try to correlate. If you want to understand geological time scale, okay, let us equate it to something. Now that something here is see here, what they have done is 1 second is equated to 1 lakh years. If 1 second is equated to 1 lakh years, what has been happening over the clock time here? Then towards the right side of your screen, you will see if the whole day, or you equate the geological time scale to 24 hours, that one particular day, how has the earth say functioned in that particular period. Let me tell you that from midnight, where possibly we are supposed to start our day, that's the formation of the earth happens on midnight. uh, in fact, till 3 a.m., that's for the first billion years or so, till 3 a.m., okay, at least 500 million years or so, meteorite bombardment took place, okay, and it was continuously happening on the surface as such. It is at 4 o'clock in the morning. It is at 4 o'clock in the morning, which possibly could be the end of the first billion years as such, that origin of life. Now, this origin is, of course, microscopic, it is single cellular, and so on and so forth. Okay, the present fossils that we have, the deepest that we can dig into is the fossils which were formed at around 5 hours and 30 minutes in the morning. Okay, all the oldest fossils are around 6 a.m. as such. Remember, we're not speaking about large forms of life even till now. Around 9 a.m., we have what is called as abundant banded iron formation. This is a important phase, and that is why they have mentioned it here. We don't have time to go into the details of that, but this is mentioned very well in the documentary that we will be seeing. So I would not be investing much time here. Then you'll see that, just imagine, from midnight to early morning, sorry, from midnight to early morning, from early morning to noon time. Okay, you have already spent half of the day. You hardly have any traces of life. It's at around say 2 p.m. that you start finding single-celled animals like algae. They have given you the precise time, 2 hours and 8 minutes as such. Okay, I was referring to flowers, etc., and the sexual reproduction within animals and plants starts around 6 o'clock in the evening. You have already used up 3 of the major quarters of the day, and you don't have much. So you can just imagine the scale at which, how slowly time has been moving over this particular planet. Or in other words, if you have to actually get the sense of the 4.6 billion years that we have been having this planet for, how slowly time has moved on this as such. And then you'll see that suddenly, and somewhere here, you're going to have the Cambrian explosion. Okay, and it's after that that you have a quick increase in the size and the variety of animals as such. Seaweeds and trilobites, the earliest of the well-maintained fossils that we have. And then it was around 9 o'clock or nearly 10 o'clock in the night, remember, okay, 9, 10 o'clock in the night. You have only 2 hours for the whole day to end. We have equated the whole day to say the geological time scale, of which you have spent 22 hours. It's the last 2 hours that you have land plants. So life on land may not be more than these 2 hours, equated to the respective period in the geological time scale. And then you have dinosaurs. Okay, while we see the movies on dinosaurs, Jurassic Park and Lost World, thinking that my God, this is huge into the history, okay, or in the past history of the Earth. Remember, this happened only at around 11 o'clock. Okay, so it's only 1 hour away into the history of this planet that you had dinosaurs, and we have been imagining this to be into so very back into the times as such. After that, okay, you'll see that we speak about mammals, 11 hours and 40 minutes literally, so 20 minutes to close of the day. Okay, that means mammal evolution of mammals is just 20 minutes into the history of the earth from to date as such. What is very, very important is human beings. Okay, we'll see that human beings, the first human being may have been observed on this particular planet at 11 hours 58 minutes and 43 seconds. So it's literally 11 hours and 59 minutes. Okay, so okay, to equate the geological time scale, human beings on a, a 24-hour time clock, man has been on this planet for the last minute of it only. And see, within that last minute, man has caused so much of destruction on this particular planet. He has led to what are being experienced as anthropogenic causes of climate change and so on and so forth. Okay, we need to get the sense of this. Okay, uh, to understand it in the right way as such. I just want to say that why is it important that we as students of education, students of geography, need to understand all this? Let me tell you that man has been on this particular planet for only 1 minute of that time. Okay, having said that, will man be an eternal animal on this particular planet? No. That for the last 23 hours and 59 minutes he was not there does not prove that man was there on the first day. Okay, he was not there for the birth of this particular planet. Okay, it's only the last minute he may be there. So this logically leads to another fact that we need to understand and keep it here definitely, that man will not be there till the last day of this planet also. Okay, that man is there here also means that you have the best of the conditions, or rather mammals over the period of time experience best of the climatic conditions of the mammals of whom human beings came up as the prime animal. So it's only because we had the best of the climatic conditions around us, that man came into prominence and man evolved into the present status we are. What does that mean? That means that, okay, if I say that what has man caused, you'll say man has caused a lot of pollution, etc., etc. I will tell you that take me to the worst, most polluted area on this particular planet, and I can tell you the period in this wherein the earth was facing or having a more severe climatic conditions as compared to say that most polluted area in the world. What am I pointing at? Okay, you'll see that I, one thing I've already clarified is that it's because we had favorable conditions that we have come to this particular level. So the moment favorable conditions go down, okay, who's going to perish at the count of it, or at the account of it? Human beings. And you'll see that man is a very egoistic animal. We speak about all those things on 5th of June. What is 5th of June known as? Known for, rather? Anybody? Quick. 5th of June, World Environment Day. And what placards do we hold on the World Environment Day? Save the earth. Who are we to save the earth? We have not been there even for a minute, and we may be there on this planet for another 5 minutes before the planet vanishes as one of the dead planets in the solar system. Who are we to save the planets? Okay, but our ego prevents us from saying that, as if we are the caretakers of this particular planet. We are not the caretakers of this planet. We have disturbed the whole system on this planet by ourselves. So instead, we should be holding placards, save ourselves. Unless We do that, you're going to have higher levels of pollution, higher levels of climate change. And if climates keep on changing that way, we are going to have a terrible time to face in the future. That's what I wanted to highlight. And that's the broad sense of, I would say, the geological time scale. I'll again go into the details of it when we meet for some a lecture next time. For now, let me stop here, and I will come back to this. Uh, Before I start asking you for your queries, please write down your attendance in the chat box so that yeah, there is a lot of interesting information posted by other students as well. But if you have any queries, if you have any points of discussion, you could just unmute yourself and share it with the class for the
Uh,
next couple of minutes. Yeah, yeah, Veda.
so I have two questions. My first question is, a thing came to my mind that
Yeah.
if it is possible and the
Hmm.
Earth revolves faster than what it revolves now, then will the human being age faster?
Um, that remains to be seen. Technically, obviously, the day will end earlier, and technically, if the day ends earlier, the year will end earlier. And if that happens, obviously, we will say that human beings are coming. We would be technically counting the years faster, but going by the evolution cost, I don't think it should make any difference as such, because the speed at which the surface and the organs and the organic matter that makes up our body will age and decay will remain the same. That's
Okay.
what my take on it is. Yeah, your second question.
Uh, My my second question is, yesterday I asked about the tertiary, the term tertiary, about what is
Tertiary.
the meaning.
Tertiary. I'm very sorry. I forgot about it. I could have mentioned, but you see, we had so much of information packed for the day that I hardly remembered that, and it would not be appropriate to take it right now because we've already exhausted the time. You would be having your next lecture also. Other students will have to leave for that lecture, but I keep that in mind. Next time we meet, please remind me of tertiary activities again. I will speak about it. Okay, on a very broad scale, let me tell you that there is, uh, those who have any information about anything that we do as a part of our course is concerned, directly related to the syllabus or not, you can post the link of that particular clip film into our group, and let us all enjoy these pieces of information, and let us collect that. Coming back to the fact, let me tell you that as far as economic activities, first activities, and that is why they are called as primary, what fall out of that is called as secondary. And then in the sequence of activities, the third is tertiary, and that's why it is called as tertiary. And the fourth in the sequence is quaternary, and that is why four quarter. That is how they have named it. Of course, the geographical, the economic geographical relevance of it is understood when we speak about it in much more detail. Let us see when we have time for that. In fact, let me tell you that we need to go into the details of that in the second semester. But as the question has come right now, we would at least handle a few aspects of that when we meet in our next lecture. Please remind me about tertiary activities,
Okay,
then
sir.
I will take it up again. Thank you very much for being there. Have a good weekend, and of course, let me wish all of you all a very happy Diwali in advance. We possibly will be meeting after a break of 1 week. The coming week, and then of course I'll be announcing the details about it on the group regularly. Thank you very much once again. Wish you a very happy Diwali. You can leave the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Happy
sir.
Diwali.
Happy
Thank you, sir.
Diwali.
Happy Diwali.